It's over to Stanford. Oh my goodness! And if you're watching the full video, with the four coaches that we'll talk about uh, New Mexico later. But let's start with Stanford. Let's start with Stanford. Frank Reich getting the interim head coach tag over there at Stanford. Andrew Luck, the general manager at Stanford, fires Troy Taylor because of unfortunate circumstances that definitely need to be reprimanded if true, of course. So he's out. CD and I, we were both very high on Troy Taylor as a coach. If you remember him at Sacramento State, they didn't even have they didn't even play during COVID. Like they didn't even have a COVID year. Like they didn't play at all, any of it. And still in the 3 seasons he was there, like they went 30-8, which is nuts. So he got hired there. We were high on him. He had some nice offenses, some signature wins for sure, some nice recruiting classes. Like he looked like he was starting to get some momentum there, and it just gets shot down by just unforgivable behavior. Brutal, right? Now Andrew Luck has a decision here as the general manager. It's like this late. Do you even call it the cycle? Because like the cycle's over. In March. You just like, do you go in and do you invest in someone that you think you could see a future with at Stanford, or do you call up Frank Reich, who's walking around Costco with flip flops, and be like, please, 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 will you coach us for 1 year with an interim tag? Of course, Frank Reich, who loves football, is unemployed. He's like, yeah, for sure, I'll do it. Who has had coaching experience at the NFL level, albeit not a ton of success at the head coaching level, plenty of success at the coordinator level, and had a couple good years there with the Colts, sure, as a head coach with Andrew Luck there as quarterback. But I just, and we'll talk about expectations for this hire, because they're not very high, but I'm just like, I'm just very disappointed, right? Because I think these kids that are going to play for Stanford, you're not necessarily wasting a year of eligibility because he is an NFL coach, right? He's going to give them his best, but like, it just feels like you're wasting a year of the program, right? It's a temporary hire so you can potentially rebuild in the future. Like you got season ticket holders, you've got these players, and maybe like Stanford fans are going to come in and be like, no, this was the right thing in the comments, and maybe it will be in hindsight. But I just got to say I was a little bit disappointed in terms of the fact that there wasn't a real coaching search that was done. It was just, I mean, I'm sure there were other candidates, but it sounded like from Frank Reich's perspective, it was a phone call and then it was over and it was done. There was no real coaching search. It was just like, hey, let me go call up my buddy Frank Reich, who I know is a good coach, and let's see what he can do for a year while we spend the rest of the year trying to figure out the future for this program. And by the way, you moved to the ACC, budgets are challenging, NIL is changing. Like, you are behind right now. You are behind. And maybe hiring Frank Reich in the interim is your way of using this year to catch up in other aspects. And by hiring a coach that you really believe in that can, make splash, make waves, whatever. But I can't help but be just a little bit disappointed. And maybe Stanford fans aren't, but I am.
It is unorthodox. It is unprecedented in a time where we are seeing college football change more and more and things that have happened that we never thought we would see. Here's another one of them where Andrew Luck, the general manager of Stanford, who famously retired right in the middle of the preseason game, right? And all of a sudden he has to deal with almost the reverse end, little karma coming back to him where he gets put in a tough spot that his school has to figure out what's going on. And you talked about late in the cycle. Yeah, like the cycle's over. And to me, when I heard the news and I was like, are you I was so mad. I was like, this is ridiculous. You've got qualified guys that have worked their tail off, not only on the Stanford staff, but the players, fans, like you talked about too. I was like, what is going on at that program? But I listened to Andrew Luck talk about it. I kind of had time to digest, and I realized the circumstances and the context that it was, right? So first of all, like whoever you are hiring, like if there was someone on staff you felt good about long term, like he gets the job, hands down, right? However, how does Andrew Luck even know that? And other guys know that he was there for a couple months. That was it, and he gets thrown in a situation like this, and obviously it sounds like this has been brewing for a while. So I the other thing that's concerning too is like I don't think this was a massive surprise to Stanford, right? The athletic department. So like you Frank, like you didn't have a list of qualified candidates you could have called. You didn't have what maybe they did and we just didn't hear about it. But it's really interesting. I think the process of having an interim head coach and that kind of humility and that kind of like, yeah, like it sucks to punt on the season. And I get like the human aspect and I get the potential downturns that this may face your program for years to come. I think the idea of not rushing this hire and just trying to right the ship in a way with Andrew Luck, I think kind of pushing the forefront in recruiting in the future of football, of Stanford football, is Andrew Luck, right? And this year, you're setting a culture, you're setting an expectation, an NFL locker room you're going to have there with Frank Reich stepping in. It's really, really interesting. I mean, how many guys in college football can say that they are learning from a former NFL head football coach?
About 120
It's Ohio
in
State's Ohio,
Chapel Hill.
Bill Belichick, right? Who, by the way, I'd reserves about two, and like obviously that's fair. And then Chip Kelly was the OC at Ohio State. So like that's it. That's the list. And now Stanford throws in there. And two, like I will say, like selfishly, the development of Frank Reich and what he's done with quarterbacks, I has not been fantastic recently. Bryce Young, right, was not great. Um, However, like Elijah Brown is there, and he fits this pro style offense, and I'll talk about that more when we get into some of the changes that are going to happen, shuffling around with that coaching staff and a little more pro style offense that he will run that fits Elijah Brown more than it fit when Troy Taylor was there from Sacramento State. So it's super interesting. However, like the process is wild and it's unorthodox and whatever. And my expectations are super low to begin with, so my grade will seem okay. I know I'm kind of bouncing back and forth here. I just think it's fascinating. I love the idea of Andrew Luck just pushing forward and like, fuck it. I'm just gonna take over recruiting. I'm gonna take over culture. I'm gonna do this, this, and this. I'm the smartest guy who's ever, touched the football field, and he's just gonna kill
Probably.
it. Yeah, probably. I mean, that's not crazy, but also like, and I'll talk about it with staff. Like, you have no special teams coordinator. Like in a time where like, if you've never been around like major college football, major like NFL football, like special teams coordinators do so much for you, and they're like super organized and like all this kind of stuff. You have no special teams coordinator. It is your senior special teams quality control analyst, Fred Judici, who is running the special teams. Not even a coordinator. Like you couldn't even give him a title promote. I mean, not that Andrew Luck's in over his head. I just think he is treading water. And now he is Andrew Luck. He will figure it out. But it is a wild time we live in. A wild time we live in.
I mean, I guess let's talk expectations, and then I'll let you talk about the staff. But like for me, expectations. I mean, this is a roster that was decimated by the transfer portal. First of all, and you still have some talent there. You still have some talent there, but then the transfer portal is supplemented. Like the only guys that you can get are this is it's Ivy League guys and FCS guys. That's what it is. With the exception of like a Memphis guy here, a Georgia Tech guy here. You know, buried on the depth chart wide receiver from Wisconsin here. 23 outgoing transfers to 12 incoming transfers. Not to mention your recruiting class took a huge dive this past year. It's fascinating. So my expectations are like I, I haven't looked at their schedule, but they've won 3 games these last 2 years with Troy Taylor. I think it would be quite the performance from this team if they were to win 3 games. And maybe they have some out of conference scheduling that is favorable that can get them to 3 wins. No.
So you have week 0. You open at
And
Hawaii.
by the way, sorry, real quick. We're talking about next year's schedule because again, this is an interim head
Yeah.
coach. So this is the only year that he's going to be coaching here. So when we're measuring expectations, it's just for this upcoming year, I guess. I
So
guess.
your out of conference games are at Hawaii, at BYU, San Jose State, who just beat you. Remember that.
Yep.
And
And Kenny Matolo is a dog.
and to end the year, you host Notre Dame. I mean, you're talking about like potential like 1-3, like best case scenario, like maybe 2-2. We'll see. But listen, I like Coach Ken there at San Jose State. Regardless, though, in conference, Boston College at home, new coach Bill O'Brien, year 2, at Virginia across the country, at SMU coming off a bye across the country. You host Florida State, who you have to imagine will be a little bit better at least this year.
They'll be
At
more talented than you for sure.
well, more talent for sure. At Miami, Florida. You host Pittsburgh. You at Bill Belichick in North Carolina. You get a bye, and then you play the Cal Bears. I mean, and then obviously you finish with Notre Dame. It's a like I said, yeah, 3 wins is it's pretty good.
And like, here's the thing: like,
4 wins, very good.
I think like the hiring of Frank Reich because of the name, right? I think your expectations for this season alone, I think, go up, right? Because you got the NFL pedigree, whatever. But I don't think that that should be the case, right? Because I, I,
But you also lose David Bailey, and that's the first one that's gone. Like David Bailey's a
so
freaking monster.
so I think the over under win total here is going to be 2.5 when it comes out in Vegas, and I guess to preview my grade, I will not be taking the over
Yeah.
when that comes out. I will not be taking the over. So yeah, and by the way, my expectations right for this upcoming season and the grade that I give the hire is actually independent of my feelings towards whether or not a school should be hiring interim coaches, in March. Um, out of interim coaches from out of the building that are only going to be coaches for 1 year, and they've already talked about that they're not taking the interim tag off. Like it's just a one and done. Like it is a one and done. No future there at Stanford after this particular season. And the players know it, right? The donors know it. The fans know it. And I just think that that's brutal. But that's, believe it or not, independent of my actual grade of the actual grade that I give the hire. Let's just remember that. It probably should be factored, but we've never had to do this before for our coaching grades. So I don't know what to do. So I'm actually grading it independently.
One last reason why Luck talked about, why he's not hiring a full-time coach is they also have an interim athletic director. So not only like a lot of intern, a lot of change going on there, in oh my gosh. But yes, the interim athletic director is the COO, right? Who does not have a ton of experience with athletics. So that's that, right? That I'll just stop it right there. I'm kind of out of my league when we talk about that. But
They're like a corporate guy or
Stanford was
lady,
it? This lady,
corporate guy.
Stanford MBA, right? Harvard economic, like very very qualified, elite smart, like him or her and Andrew Luck. Like I'm very very smart, but yeah, yeah. But I thought that's crazy that there's more interim there going on, in that program. My expectation is 2 to 4 wins, right? Like I think that's somewhere around there, depending on how things shake out injury wise, and like you could have a very very bad Virginia or very very bad Cal. Like who knows what happens there with bottom of the ACC. I want you to build somewhat of a recruiting class. Right now, you have what 3 commits. You already lost one, a 4-star kid, linebacker, very good. You already lost one, like, and more could be coming, especially with the spring portal opening up. Like David Bailey's gone because he knows he has a spot somewhere else. But if you are on the verge of like depth chart 2, 3, whatever it may be, like, and there's not a lot of upside for you staying because you're not even building with a staff that's going to be there next year. So it's wild. So to me, like, get some kind of a recruiting class together. Don't get decimated in the spring portal. and start building a culture that you want with Andrew Luck and whoever else may be a part of the future of Stanford football, who I have no idea who that's going to be, which is crazy, right? I'll talk about the staff real quick. So the big change that you're going to want to talk about and that Stanford fans should know is you will have a new offensive system, right? So Troy Taylor is known as an offensive guy, right? Great for him. But however, like Frank Reich is a pro style guy. He's also offensive, but it's a pro style guy. So you're going to have an offensive coordinator who was the tight ends coach, Nate Byham. He'll step in to be the OC. He will also continue to coach the tight ends. He'll have some help, with Corey Ezzal kind of moving into assistant tight end coach, but he will be mostly focused around calling plays and designing that kind of stuff for Elijah Brown and this offense here. The quarterback's coach, Thomas Merkel, he was promoted from offensive quality control assistant to assistant quarterback's coach. Like the running backs, wide receivers, all the same, as well as the offensive line coaches. They're all similar. Defensively, Bobby April is back, obviously. New Andy Thompson, which is crazy. He's going to be the co-defensive coordinator. He most recently served as the head coach for Sacramento State as Troy Taylor's defense coordinator, so that's kind of crazy. Regardless, though, the D-line coach, outside linebackers, they're all the same. The inside linebackers, so Andy Thompson not only would be co-DC, he'll also coach the inside linebackers. For safeties, you have Cody Whitfield coming in. He was on UCLA staff the past couple of seasons. He was also with Troy Taylor at Sacramento State in 2022. And like I said, there is no special teams coordinator. It's going to be Fred Judici. That's kind of going to be in charge of that offense, or of the special teams. So make that what you will. It is crazy to see how this whole relationship and the stuff will work out with Reich and the offense, and then even Bobby April and Thompson on the defense side. So a lot of changes, a lot of chaos going on. Spring is going to be a time of a lot of learning and growth, and hopefully, I think if you're Stanford fans, you're just bracing to make it through. I think, come August, you'll sleep much better. Come next December, I think you'll sleep much, much better with what's going to go on there. But we'll see. It is hilarious. It is hilarious. My final grade here, I'll go B minus. I tried to give a C. I love the idea of what Andrew Luck is doing and like what he can do at Stanford. But like we said, this is about like this year's expectations. I think Frank Reich is going to somewhat stabilize the ship. So I'm hoping that there's not, and I'm counting on for my grade, that there's not some mass exodus, in the portal and recruiting. Things could fall apart bad. This could be an easy F. If you have zero recruiting, you get rated in the portal, and you win 1-2 games. Like this could be an easy F. I'm going to be a little bit more optimistic. I'll go B minus.
I'll be a little bit more pessimistic, and I'll give it a C plus for the reason that you just mentioned. Like, how do we know? I get that the staff is coaching for their jobs, so they're going to try to recruit
And the
as
players
best
too.
they can.
Money.
Yeah,
players spots on next year. Like, yeah,
I get that. But I just don't see a world in where you bring in an interim head coach and you flourish in that aspect of college football, which we know is vital. And yeah, you got work to do in the spring portal. And do I think that they're going to have some success here? I think we'll be surprised. I think we'll be pleasantly surprised with what they do in the spring portal. We might go, oh, they added a good player here or there. Oh, okay. I didn't know that. All right. I didn't know that he was interested in going to Stanford. Yeah. Whatever, G5 guy going up, whatever it is. All right. I Again, the measurable expectations are going to be the Vegas lines when they come out, and it's like 2.5, right? Maybe they're already out, but I'm just going to throw it out there and say that it's probably going to be 2.5, and I don't think that they're going to get to 3 wins. So that's my quantifiable expectations for this upcoming year, and I'll say that he's not going to meet it, so I'm going to give it a C plus. Thought about giving it a lower grade than that. However, I do think that there is a chance that he elevates quarterback play and that they could do something that they could scare a couple teams here or there and whatnot. But I'm just still a little bit upset about this. And I like Andrew Luck there long term, like you said, being involved in football operations, being involved in coaching hires, being involved in recruiting, whatever. But I just I don't see how this is fair to players, the other members of the coaching staff, the fans, the donors. And I'm sure that he had long sit down talks with the administration and the boosters. I guess I'm going to trust Andrew Luck long term, but I can't say that I'm not disappointed.
For sure. He's like a lame duck. He's a lame duck head coach right now, like a lame sitting duck. Like it is, it's it's almost like I don't know. I'm thinking of when I think of like coaches that are on the hot seat that you just know are going to get fired at the end of the season. Like I think back to like Neil Brown and Billy Napier, guys that actually like turned it around. So it's kind of crazy, but
Well, Neil Brown ended up getting fired the next year, but
exactly.
I
And
see what you mean. I see
but
what you mean.
like
Or Kalani Sitake.
it's yes, it's a similar sense where you have these coaches that like how do you recruit? How do you knowing that there is no future with that? And if shit hits the fan early in the season, especially in your out of conference, which is harder than it looks on paper, I think traveling and playing some pretty darn good coaches, you could start off really bad. How hard are you playing? Like, what's going on and culture wise, trying to build a culture with an interim coach? Lastly, I want to ask you this. Now, I know it's a tough exercise, put you on the spot here, but and it doesn't really matter right now, but this will be a topic, and I think Stanford fans are interested in it. Where does this job rank in the ACC for head coaching when it does open up, assuming it opens up in 2025, 2026, right, for next, December, next hiring cycle? Where would you put that?
Sorry, I just saw the actual lines and it opened up at it's on BetMGM. It is 3.5 even for the over.
If you
I
stay
mean,
this
I'm
late,
not okay, but here's the thing. Here's the thing.
no, we're gonna
Can't
wait.
bet it now. Have to wait to the spring
Yeah.
portal, right? But crazy. But to answer your question, sorry, I was just curious about that. To answer your question, it's bottom half, but there are some tough situations in the ACC that are somewhat comparable to Stanford from a resource perspective, from an academic restrictions perspective, um,
It's
but
not.
from a geography perspective, from a history perspective, from Andrew Luck being in your building perspective, it's bottom half, but it's not like I don't think it's bottom quarter. Is that fair to say?
I need to see how they distribute their revenue, assuming that the standard
True.
15% goes to the football, because you do have Olympic sports that are a big deal at Stanford, right? So like
Huge deal.
Ledecky, she's Stanford, right?
Stanford is the Olympic school.
Yeah. So,
But yeah, it's
but here's the other thing too. Like, and I would, I've heard that brought up a lot, and I brought it up too. I just will say, like, my counter argument to that is, what kind of like, yes, you need funding for that it already gets, right? But in terms of like paying the players and recruiting players, like who are you competing with? You know what I mean? So it's just interesting. But regardless, so I'm with you there. It's probably bottom half because like I'll say easy better jobs that are easily better. It's Clemson, Miami, Louisville, Florida State, North Carolina, Georgia Tech, SMU, probably Virginia Tech, and probably NC State. I think everyone else, I think you have a legitimate chance for Stanford to be in the conversation as being like if a good or a better job than that, or if not the same with like Syracuse, Boston College, Virginia, Cal, Wake Forest, right? Some of the Pitt, even like to me, it just kind of depends on what goes on the next 12 months. That's going to change my opinion and my ranking.